Hello and welcome to this week's VAR on Air segment. My name is Peter Vu. I'm one of VAR's interns, and today we're excited to highlight the achievements of Vietnamese Americans in education. Our guest today is actually Mr. Tom Huynh, a pioneering figure in our community's educational landscape. And I'll pass it on to Jay.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Jay. I am also a VAR intern, and I'm super excited to be here today with Mr. Tom Huynh to hear about his journey in education. Could you please introduce yourself and share your story with us?
Sure. Well, as you guys have already introduced, my name is Tom Huynh. I work for the Eastside Union High School District, currently at the district office as the Associate Superintendent of Business Services. And within that position, I oversee technology, maintenance, finance, budgeting, food services, um, what else? Payroll, um, construction, etc. Um, Prior to that, I was the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources and, well, needless to say, in charge of human resources, right? So the hiring, onboarding, and retention of staff members to our organization. And so I'm kind of just going to go backwards, right, on my timeline. So I think that makes a little more sense. Um, and then before that, I was a senior project manager for our school district, which um, was working with construction and the bond program to build new buildings for our district and to help design and program spaces that are appropriate for students at our school sites. And then previous to that, for 8 years, I was a principal at Yerba Buena High School. And then before that, 3 years as a associate principal or a vice principal at the same school at Yerba Buena. I taught 10 years before that. And so in total, I've been in education for 27 years now, 17 with Eastside Union High School District. First year, my current position, but my fourth year as an associate level, associate superintendent, associate superintendent level position. Um, that's me.
Wow, thank you so much. That was actually pretty interesting to hear about,
Mhm.
especially because you've been almost like 3 decades. Like that's like a pretty long time. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to hear about, or for this like the rest of the segment, being able to hear more about your experience. So my first question for you is, can you tell us about your experience growing up as a Vietnamese American immigrant? How did your experience as a student early on shape your decision to pursue a career in education?
Yeah, the way I feel it, it's I owe everything I have, my kids' life, my life, everything that I worldly cherish, right, and possess now, I owe it to the education system. Um, my parents came here, they immigrated to the United States. Um, we were considered a second wave boat people. And so we left Vietnam in 1980, um, came here in 1981 after 1 year in a refugee camp in Hong Kong. Um, and so with that, we came to the United States, we settled in Southern California, um, didn't know any English whatsoever, went to a school with probably two other Vietnamese students, and one being, my cousin. So, and I'm looking back, it was a struggle, but at that time, I didn't feel the struggle, you know what I mean? Because I was too young. I was only in the first grade. And so, I mean, every first grader doesn't kind of know what they're doing, right? They're just still feeling their way. But in addition to that, being a first grader, brand new to the country, not understanding the language, it was an additional barrier that I had to overcome. Um, and until I really got a grasp of the English language, and until I really mastered the language, it was always a struggle, right? Because it's unlike native speakers and people who are already proficient, it's one less hurdle that they have to overcome to learn what they need to learn. And that goes the same way with all of our students, right, or English language learners, where it's not just about learning calculus or learning A push or lang. They have to still learn the language that they exist in every single day. And so it's an extra layer, it's an extra challenge for them to overcome. Um, and so I grew up all my life with that particular challenge. Um, I was in ESL classes throughout my elementary school years. Didn't really kind of fully adopt the language probably till I was in the sixth grade. Was when I, became more fluent. Um, and the sort of the translation of the language wasn't as active, meaning, before I became fluent, I had to like filter all the content through like my language and then figure out in Vietnamese, okay, that meant this, and then filter it back through and express it in English, right? But then once I became fluent, that filter was gone. I could just absorb that information in English and then still understand it. Um, now there are things you can't ever get rid of, right? So there's still some times where I would still make grammatical mistakes and whatnot, and that's just part of who I am, and I accept and embrace that. Um, I went to high school in Hayward. I went to college at St. Mary's College in Moraga. Um, and, again, throughout my high school and throughout my childhood, um, I wasn't surrounded by many fellow Vietnamese American students. Up in the East Bay, there wasn't that many. It wasn't like it wasn't like San Jose, right? Where there's a pocket, there's an enclave of Vietnamese American students. And I remember and it's very ironic um, and kind of when I think about it, it was kind of cool, but still ironic that when I was in high school in Hayward, there were days where we cut school, right? And what kid doesn't cut school? There was days where we cut school and we drove to San Jose to get like dessert because there's nothing up there. There's no Vietnamese, there's no resources and whatnot. So we went down San Jose. We went to the old Lions shopping center on Tully, you know, um, and then we crashed Yerba Buena, So back in the day, I was actually a trespasser onto the same campus that I became principal of. So it was like I said, in a way, it was kind of cool, but it's you know, but that's like my experience, right? I didn't grow around a lot of Vietnamese students, and so the same thing with when I went to college. Um, I started my career as a teacher in Newark, and again, not a high Vietnamese population. And then after I taught for 10 years, when I went to administration, and when I had decided where do I want to go to pursue my career, um, I looked at East Side, and at the time, East Side Union, had the largest Vietnamese, not by concentration, but the largest Vietnamese population around. And I really thought that if I want to make an impact, if I want to make a difference in the lives of you know of students and of youths, then that's a district I want to go to. Um, I got into education to begin with because I wanted to make an impact. Um, all through St. Mary's, we learned about religion. We have learned about, I'm not religious, but we learned about various religions, right? Um, and part of my sort of like my personal belief, and not necessarily religious, but personal belief is there's a chance, right? And we don't know. There's a chance that there is no afterlife. I'm not saying there is, I'm not saying there is, and we don't know. There's a chance that this is it. This is our one lifetime. We get to live it. And after we die, we become fertilizer. Okay. Now, that may offend a lot of people. That some people may believe in the afterlife. That's great. I'm not disparaging that. And that's great for them. I believe in the afterlife. I believe there's something else beyond, right? And I believe in God, etc., and all that stuff. But there's a chance in my mind. Okay, there's a chance. There might be a chance that we're just we're just bodies on this earth, and we become fertilized after we pass away. Um, and if that is, and if there's a chance that that actually happens, then during my lifetime, I want to make as big of an impact as possible. Um, and one way to make that impact is making memorable moments for students. That no matter what, as students grow and they go through high school and they have kids and they mature into adulthood, they can say, oh yeah, I remember Mr. Wynn. Oh yeah, I remember that crazy principal, or like that weird principal, whatever it is, right? Or like that kooky, whatever the adjective you place in front of it, at least they said, yeah, I remember that XYZ principal. I remember he did this for me or didn't do this for me. That's a memory that lasts a long time, that lasts forever. And especially the students get to parlay that and get to relay that to their kids and whatnot. That's that's my legacy, right? That's my afterlife. I've created my own afterlife. I get to live beyond my true natural expression thing. Versus if it became like an engineer or a doctor. Okay, I say left. What's the big deal, right? But then it's not the same. And so that's why I got into teaching, make a difference with students, to create my own afterlife in some weird way. And you guys may think, what? This guy's crazy. I thought we were doing his dad. He's crazy, right? Um, and where I want to make that impact was in a school district that had, the largest student population around. Um, but that's, like I said, that was my experience. I wasn't surrounded by a lot of Vietnamese students. My Vietnamese language is not very proficient because of that. I didn't have the luxury that our district had in terms of taking Vietnamese classes. Although I did come down to San Jose to take the Sunday school Vietnamese classes, but only for like a couple of years, and that didn't really stick very well. Um, but beyond that, my childhood and early career was in an area devoid of Vietnamese influence. Throughout my entire life, as I was growing up, all through college, I did not have a single Vietnamese teacher, right? Um, and that wasn't in my vernacular. And honestly, when I went to college, my first major was in biology. Okay, and that was because that's what I thought my parents expected me to be: major in biology, become a doctor, become a dentist, become one of the stereotypical roles that you know that Asian students feel, or Asian youths feel, that they are beholden to, that they owe something to their parents, that they need to be doctor, lawyer, yeah, the engineer, etc. Right? Um, so I majored in biology. I didn't like it, honestly. I just did it because I felt compelled to do it because that's what my parents expected me to do, but I didn't really enjoy it. And I just majored in biology. I kept on went at it, went at it. It was my junior year where I had the kind of guts to say, I don't want to do biology anymore, right? But I was still too chicken to drop it because I was fearful what my parents would say. So I picked up a second major my junior year. So then I became a double major in biology and history, right? Just so that I can like have it both ways, basically. And of course, with those two majors, as you know, one is liberal arts and one is, science based, STEM based, and those don't cross over very well. It's not like I'm a English and literature major, right? There's some crossover classes. Those two majors do not cross over. Um, and so I think it was my beginning of my senior year where I had to make the tough decision to go with one or the other. Do I, because I could not I could not sustain double in biology and history. Um, and I had to choose one or the other. And I had a conversation with my parents one week. I don't remember when, but I know it was my senior year. I told them, look, I don't want to become that doctor. I want to become a teacher, right? Um, and to my utter shock, they didn't care. They were like, if that's what makes you happy, then do what makes you happy, right? And I was blown away. I was blown away by that response. Um, and the initial reason why I wanted to become a teacher in the first place was at St. Mary's College, we had to put in community service hours, right, through the Christian Brothers. And one of those hours, or a set of those hours, was I tutored underprivileged students in Oakland. So St. Mary's, if you don't know the geographical area, it's about 25 minutes from Oakland, just across the hill. It's in Moraga right now. Or it's always been Moraga, excuse me, but it's in Moraga. So during the evening times, and it was just twice a week, we went to Oakland, and at the time it was Oakland Tech students, Oakland Tech high school students, and we tutored in that. And these are college students, tutoring that. I'm sure you've seen some of those, right? Um, and from there, that's when I got my passion for teaching, because I was able to help a student, through his math problems, and he had these aha moments where he realized, oh, he finally got it, right? And to me, I got so much joy out of that. That from that moment, that's when I pursue, I'm teaching because this feels too good not to do, right? This feels too good not for me to pursue. And then from there, that's when I, dove straight in and into my major. graduated with a history major at St. Mary's, and then right after that went to into the teaching credential to then become a history teacher a year after that. Um, and that's how I kind of got my early career going, which is that passion, and then finally getting the guts to tell their parents, I'm not going to be what I thought they wanted me to be, but all along they just wanted me to be happy, and that was a huge misunderstanding on my part, and having that perception. Um, but I was extremely relieved that that wasn't the case.
Thank you so much for like walking us through your journey from immigrating here to being an ESL student in like a community with very little Vietnamese people, to your journey in like
Mhm.
college and like biology, history, talking with your parents. While you were talking, like I was like taking some notes down because I found that there were a lot of like parallels
Yeah,
between both of our journeys. Obviously, I'm way younger, but I can relate with the whole when not I was not I am not an ESL student, but I kind of relate in the sense that English is definitely something I'm more fluent at, and I'm trying to kind of trace back my like roots in like the Vietnamese language. And so I like relate to a lot of your experiences that you had as an ESL student, except now for me, it's me trying to relearn Vietnamese. So that was
yeah.
really interesting to hear about. And also, when you were talking about like majoring in biology because you thought that was what your parents wanted for you,
Mhm.
um, I guess for me, I'm kind of lucky that I was able to figure this out with my parents before I was like 3 years into college.
Yeah.
But a while ago, like during my junior year, since I'm a senior at the moment, we talked about what I wanted to do in the future. And I've never really been good at lying to my parents. So I told them like immediately that I wanted to go into like design, which is obviously a much more artistic, creative career.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of like stress leading up to that moment because I felt like that was just not the career that they envisioned me going into. Like I thought they expected me to go into computer science or biology or something that you would consider like most Asian parents to expect for you. And then they were just like, oh yeah, like whatever makes you happy. And like it was super heartwarming hearing the same experience that you had. Because I kind of saw that reflected in my own. But for our next question, I'm very curious into hearing your thoughts on how do you think the landscape for Vietnamese American educators has like changed since you first started your career 3 decades ago? Like what progress have you seen and what areas do you think still need improvement?
I think that the change, at least what I've seen, is pretty remarkable. Um, and going back, 17 years now when I first came here in the district, um, or let's trace back not 17 years, but let's go 14 years ago when I became principal. So as a principal, one of your duties that you have to do is hire teachers, right? You have to interview and you fill vacancies of teachers who depart, retire, leave, etc. And you hire teachers, and we post our position online, um, and we see who applies. We call them in for interview, and if the candidate meets our expectations and meet, what we are looking for, then we hire that person to become a teacher. That's how teachers get hired. Over the past 17 years, I've seen a lot, many, many more, many folds more of Vietnamese American um, individuals, Vietnamese American professionals who want to get into the teaching profession, right? And I think a large part of what has impacted that is we're in a new generation now, where it's we're in the second, third generation of the Vietnamese American immigrant journey, right? Where some of these students are sons and daughters of people who were actually born here in the United States, or people who came here when they were very young, um, and who didn't have that, what I call old school mindset of you have to be a doctor, you have to be a dentist, you know? And it's a more, I would say, Americanized point of view as far as, hey, do what makes you happy. But honestly, that's not, as a parent myself, I wouldn't characterize that as an American point of view. I think that's just a parent point of view. Like every parent, no matter what, ultimately wants their child to be successful and to be happy, right? Um, and we've seen more and more of that, and sort of the evolution of the expectation of students. We see that students who are going to college are finding it much more acceptable. Unlike my experience, they find it there's less pressure for them to be that doctor, engineer, etc. they find it more acceptable to be, a liberal arts major, to major in design, to major in communications, to major in other stuff that really piques their interest. Um, and so that's really expanded the pool of applicants. Um, I know, believe it or not, in this year we hired two Vietnamese American social workers in our district, and that's like the first time ever we've hired Vietnamese American social workers because previous to that there weren't any. We've tried, we've looked, there weren't any applicants, but it was this year that we were able to bring on two. And so over time, as a Vietnamese, what I call the Vietnamese American community in general, kind of matures, right? Into kind of just being a greater fabric of the United States. Then we'll see it in a lot more different roles. You know, um, if we compare ourselves to the Chinese American population, right? So the Chinese American population came here much earlier than we did. The first wave of Chinese Americans came in the 1800s. Okay, big wave came during the gold rush. Um, and so they've had a 150-year head start. Not that we're competing, but that's what I mean by the Chinese American community is more ingrained in the fabric of American society. And with the Vietnamese American population, we're only 50 years in. It's only been 1975 since we've been here in the United States. Before that, it was foreign to us, right? And so as we fold ourselves, and being a larger part of the fabric of America, we're going to find that, we'll have positions and jobs, and, our population will be more diversified in terms of profession, expertise, etc. And so over time, I've seen very positive changes just from the standpoint that there's a lot more applicants and a lot more candidates, a lot more interest in the field of education because, you know, it's it's okay, it's acceptable. You don't have to be a doctor. You be a teacher, you know. You be a counselor. You can be a social worker. You don't have to be a doctor. You could be a vice principal, etc. Um, and that's it's only going to improve, is my perspective. Um, so and it's gotten better.
Yeah. I don't know, hearing your story of like becoming like a teacher instead of like pursuing like the pre-med or like pre-dent pathway, it's really like inspiring because like going into high school, I had the same idea. I initially wanted to be like a computer or I wanted to be a software engineer at first. Then going into high school, I realized like that really wasn't something I wanted to pursue. And then like instead of like looking at things that I want to pursue that were in my passions, I looked toward possible future careers that would make like that I thought would make my parents happy. So I switched from software engineering, which is like a standard
Yeah,
like Asian
the
person major.
stereotypical. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I switched to pre-med. So
Wait a minute.
I no no no
You
no no
went
no
from
no.
one stereotype to another.
Yeah, so I went from one stereotype to another. And
Yeah.
then it was actually like my first experience with like working with the city of San Jose where I realized like, oh, maybe pre-med isn't really for me.
Okay.
So like going on in the future, I already talked to my parents about this and they're okay with it. And they said they had the same reaction as your parents where it was like, just pursue something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
So I've started working on things with like racial equity and public policy.
Yeah.
So going into the future, I look to like go into college as like a public policy slash political science major,
Uh,
which isn't typical for like a Vietnamese American, I'd say.
Not at all. But like I said, but it makes you happy, right? Um,
Yeah.
because as I was giving advice to my oldest daughter who graduated from YP, and she was contemplating like her career choices and her job, and I think she was trying to pick between one of two job offers that she had. And I told her, look, you have to do what makes you happy because if you're not happy doing the job that you do, you're gonna be miserable at it, and you're gonna suck at it. And when that happens, you're gonna regret that you took that job. And so, if you truly do something that you're passionate about, that you're happy about, you're gonna find much more success and much more fulfillment and much more opportunities for promotion because you're gonna do a darn good job at it, right? Because it's going to show you're passionate about it. You're going to do a very good job if you're passionate at it. And so you're going to find a higher level of success doing what you're passionate about than chasing the money and doing what what you really don't want to do. Um, and the same way, and I think, and I hope it resonates with the rest of, of our students. I don't know what it is, but like there's still quite a few of them who feel that they need to adhere to the stereotypical majors, right? Um, and my biggest encouragement to them is they shouldn't feel that way, because their parents, and of course there's always exceptions to everything, right? Um, but for the most part, their parents as parents just want their child to be successful and be happy. That's it. You know, that's the bottom line. And if it makes you happy, um, then your parents will support that. Yeah, they may be disappointed that you're not a doctor and you don't get to buy them a house, right? But if you're happy, then they'll support your happiness. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know
Mhm.
you touched on it a little like before in your last response,
Yeah.
but like going forward, what advice would you give to young Vietnamese Americans who are considering a career in something that isn't like typical of them, like isn't typically expected of them,
Mm.
like a career in education or aspiring careers in other fields?
So the one advice that I would do is, especially if someone's entering a job or a position that um, wasn't previously held by a Vietnamese American before, right? That they're the first one. Like, maybe you become the first Vietnamese mayor, Peter, of Sounds Like, okay? Or maybe Jay becomes the first world famous designer of some brand or whatever, okay? If you're the first of that, or you're into a role that's atypical of the position that of people who've held that position, um, in a way, you're carrying the burden of not just for your own success, but the success of your fellow Vietnamese and your future Vietnamese generation. And that's how I felt when I became principal at U Buena. And believe it or not, it's crazy, right? And sometimes I don't even believe it, but I was the first Vietnamese American high school principal in the country. Um, and to me, I took that on as a significant burden, but I relished it, you know. And that burden is, okay, if I'm the first, and if I'm this person, I better not fail at this, right? Because if I falter, if I fail, then that closes potential doors for future Tom Huyns 10, 15 years after me, who maybe want to become a principal. But then based on the experience of this current Tom Huynh, people don't want to hire a Vietnamese American because look what happened to the last guy, right? Um, so there's that added pressure that your success will not just impact you, but it impacts the rest of the community as well. You're setting the stage for them. Um, but ultimately, you do what you're passionate about. And I was passionate about teaching. I was passionate about running a school. Um, and I believe I did a good job at those aspects, but that's because I loved what I was doing. And I can't, you know, I can't give advice contrary to that, right? Now, granted, if Vietnamese students or Asian students want to become doctors, that's what they love doing, absolutely do that all day long. They want engineering or that's what they want, do that. I'm not saying don't do any of those, right? I'm not saying don't, I'm not saying stay away from the stereotypical, majors. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying do what makes you happy because that's gonna give you the greatest opportunity to be successful. You know?
Yeah, thank you for that. That was like really heartwarming to hear.
Mhm.
And also hearing your perspective on how there's also that like additional pressure of your success not only impacting yourself but others. I feel like I've had like thoughts like that, but I've never really heard it like put into words or been able to put it into words. So it was really great being able to hear you like talk about that. And unfortunately, we're getting pretty close to our 30-minute mark.
Yeah,
So we're gonna have to end it like here. But I just really wanted to thank you for like your time this evening and also just all the detail and depth you went into and being vulnerable with us, sharing your journey. It was really, really like great to speak with you today.
no problem. You're welcome, guys.
Yeah,
Peter. Oh yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Thank you for making time to be here and answer some of the questions that we had for you. And yeah, it's super cool to see like another Vietnamese American person um be able to succeed. And We need more people like you in this world.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah,
All right.
so we'll just end it here. Bye
All
bye.
right.
Have a good
Okay.
evening.
Thank you.